Hello everyone, this is Meteorologist Joel Curtis with the National Weather Service for your marine weather. These forecasts are issued on Sunday, July 23rd, and therefore Monday and Tuesday of this week. So let's start out with our sea ice edge. Starting out, we've got some 80% or less from about Wainwright all the way over to Kaktovik, and you have to get further out in the Arctic Ocean to get any of the solid ice pack. As we're looking at today's weather, we've got a pair of lows out in the Bering Sea, around 998 millibars. There's a little cold air filtering in behind them, and there's a real weak low that's down right near Unimak Island, about 1,006 millibars or so. We've got some high pressure ridge over the Gulf and some low pressure inside. And then further inland, that low really keeps going. A lot of thunderstorms up country, but the low down by Haida Gwaii, and it moved to the southeast, still 1,007 millibars. Hasn't weakened a whole lot, but you can see the main low in the Bering Sea has now developed to 992 millibars, and the low south of Kodiak Island now has weakened to 1,011 millibars. Still a ridge over the Gulf of Alaska showing up. And then for Tuesday, again, the high pressure is actually building a little bit over the Gulf of Alaska. That low, that high that I plotted there on the map was a little bit further south, but I wanted you to know it was 1031. It was pretty high pressure, low pressure inland, but then as you can see what's happening out in the Bering Sea, first of all, that low that was down south of Kodiak has fizzled completely, whereas we've got now a couple of pair of systems back to 998 millibars with a little bit of cold air behind them. So let's look at the marine forecasts. We've got variable winds on the inside waters for southeast, 10 to 15 knots, seas up to 3 feet down in Clarence Strait, and then 10 to 15 knots on the outside waters, seas up to about 4 feet down off of Prince of Wales Island and off of Baranof, otherwise about 3 feet. And then Tuesday, what we're looking at is 15 knots on the inside, generally a southerly component, seas up to 3 feet, and then on the outside waters, 10 to 15 knots or so, seas up to 4 feet, and they've all got a westerly component. For South Central, we've got some real variable winds on Monday and seas 2 to 3 feet or so for Prince William Sound on the outside waters. And then, but through Kennedy Entrance, we're expecting southeasterlies to 15 knots, seas 3 feet. And then as you get further up Cook Inlet, it turns about southwest or so and seas up to 4 feet with 15 knots. And then on Tuesday, now the southwesterlies kick in on the outside waters, but Prince William Sound still staying at 10 knots, 20 knot westerlies in the Kennedy Entrance area, and 15 knots near Augustine Island, but only about 10 knots as you get further up Cook Inlet and seas to 3 feet there. For the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island, we've got on the Gulf side, we have 10 to 20 knots, seas ranging up to 4 feet or so, and then generally an easterly component, except where it's really variable to 10. And then in Bristol Bay, note that 20 knots, seas 2 feet on Monday, but southwesterlies as you get further down toward in Alaska with 15 knots at seas 3 feet. And then on Tuesday, 10 to 20 knots on the Gulf side again, particularly through Chillicothe Strait, seas up to 5 feet. Otherwise, 2 to 4 feet as on the Bering and, on the Gulf and Pacific side. But then in the Bering Sea side, we've got 10 to 15 knots and seas up to 3 feet. Then for the Aleutians, quite a lot more wind, especially with that low pair of lows that have been out in the Bering. Winds right around 20 to 25 knots mostly, and they do have a lot of them have a westerly component or so, generally southerlies. On the Pacific side, we've got up to 10 feet, and on the Bering Sea side, we've got up to 7 feet. And then for Tuesday, again, got slight westerly component in a lot of these winds, 20 to 25 knots. On the Pacific side, up to 9 feet, and up in the Bering Sea, up to 7-foot seas. And then for the west coast, circulation around that low, generally got an easterly component on that. And then wind right around 20 knots for the Pribilofs and St. Matthew, seas about 5 feet. But then as you get closer to the coast, less fetch. So we've got about 3 feet, but still up to 15 knots. And then on Tuesday, winds ramping up to 20 knots. Remember that low deepened a little bit. And then we're seeing seas 4 to 5 feet as you get further north. And then out in the Pribilofs and St. Matthew, seas up to 7 feet with 20 knots of wind. And then generally easterlies along the Beaufort Sea, 15 to 25 knots, seas up to 5 feet in those open spaces there. But then as you get down in the Chukchi, 5 to 10 knots or so, you got to go all the way south to find 15 knots and seas up to 3 feet. On Tuesday, generally easterlies again, 15 to 20 knots, seas up to 4 feet in those ice-free waters. And then southeasterlies, 20 down to 10 knots for the Chukchi, and seas up to 4 feet. And that's it for your marine forecast. So thanks for tuning in. I want everybody to file a float plan. Be sure to check on the weather before you go out, and please stay safe out there. Thank you.